House will come to order. Members, please take your seats. Sergeant at Arms.
The House is now in session. All persons not entitled to privilege of the floor, please retire to the gallery.
The members will rise and be led in prayer by Huronessa Faryad, faith leader, Adams Center Mosque, Sterling, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, which will be led by the delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Good afternoon. With peace and blessings to you all, please join me in prayer. Most gracious and loving God, we gather here today to bless those who have been elected to serve the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. We ask for your ease, blessing, and guidance as they begin this session of the House of Delegates. Grace each member here with wisdom, clarity, and compassion as they make decisions that impact the lives of so many. May their deliberations be guided by the motivation of fairness and justice. May their hearts remain attuned to the needs of all those they represent, especially the most marginalized in our Commonwealth. Grant them the courage to stand firm in their convictions, yet the humility to listen with open minds to differing perspectives. May the common good always prevail over division, and may collaboration triumph over conflict. Keep them safe and committed in their roles as leaders. We also ask for strength, peace, and patience for their families and loved ones who support them during their time in service. As they navigate the challenges of governance, let their work be a reflection of unity, good intention, and optimism. May they always be mindful of the trust placed in them by the citizens of this Commonwealth, and may they strive to honor it with dignity and integrity. Amen.
Amen.
Pass that.
The members will answer the roll call by indicating their presence on the electronic voting board. Clerk will close the roll.
Mr. Speaker, a quorum is present.
Pursuant to House Rule 3, I've examined and approved the Journal of the House of Delegates for January 21st, 2025. Motions and resolutions under Rule 39, pursuant to the provisions of Rule 40, are now in order. Does the clerk have any announcements or communications?
Mr. Speaker, no announcements or communications. Therefore, in this first portion of the morning hour, pursuant to House Rule 40, the Speaker requests you use request to speak buttons for the items listed for reference up on the voting board.
The delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Reeser.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I rise for two introductions.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning's prayer was given by Huronessa Faryad, a leader from the Adams Center Mosque with multiple locations in Northern Virginia and Loudoun County. Ms. Faryad is the founding director of America's first youth choir in a mosque. Known as the Adams Beat, the choir blends art and faith to inspire young people. Ms. Faryad has actively participated in multifaceted, multi-faith discussions at the White House and HHS under the previous two administrations, focusing on addressing Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, underscoring her commitment to fostering understanding. As a former child refugee from Afghanistan, Ms. Faryad brings a unique perspective to her work, drawing on her personal journey to inspire and lead. She resides in Ashburn, Virginia with her children, continuing to dedicate her life to building a more inclusive and compassionate society. I hope it is the pleasure of the body to give Ms. Faryad a warm house welcome.
Welcome, Ms. Faryad. Welcome to the Capitol. A delegate from Rockbridge, Delegate Campbell. Oh, I'm sorry. Delegate from Rockbridge, belay that. Delegate Reeser, you still have the floor for another announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the body, seated in the gallery today are community members who are here for Muslim Day of Advocacy, and I would ask that they please rise. Representatives here are members of the Move Chamber of Commerce, the Adams Center Mosque, Darul Hijra, the Muslim Association of Virginia, West End Islamic Center, and the Muslim Civil League. Virginia is home to 400,000 Muslims, including many small business owners and professionals. Today, the Muslim community, under the leadership of the MOVE Business Chamber, has organized the Muslim Day of Advocacy to speak with legislators about affordable housing, small business financing, workforce development, and First Amendment protections. Thank you for your advocacy, and can we please give them a warm house welcome?
Welcome to the General Assembly today. Welcome to the Capitol. The delegate from Rockbridge, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery today, we have students and visitors from Mountain Gateway Community College, if they would please stand. Mountain Gateway serves many students in the 36th district, and they've been wonderful partners in our community. MGCC provides opportunities for expansion of knowledge, skills, and personal enrichment in an environment that maintains high academic standards and respect for each individual. The college strives to keep their programs and their services financially and geographically accessible for all students. They've been wandering around today and visiting with us, Mr. Speaker. I ask that you all join me in giving them a very warm house welcome.
Welcome to the Capitol, MGCC. Welcome to the Capitol. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a motion.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 1894 on page 19 and patroned by Delegate Siebold be re-referred to appropriations.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that House Bill 1894, found on page 19, be re-referred to the House Committee on Appropriations. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 1894 is re-referred to the Committee on Appropriations. The delegate from Hanover, Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an announcement.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow morning, I hope that you will join my co-chair, Delegate Betsy Carr, and me for the Legislative Sportsman's Caucus meeting, which will be at 7 a.m. in the morning in the 7th floor House North Subcommittee meeting room. That's a lot of words, Mr. Speaker. The special guests for the meeting are Rob Farrell, who's our state forester and the director of the Virginia Department of Forestry, and John Colclaser, director of the Forest Policy for the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. State Forester Farrell will discuss the need for active forest management and how it benefits Virginia's wildlife, and Colclaser will discuss initiatives to conserve private working forests, increase active forest management on public lands, to increase forest resiliency and improve access for sportsmen and women. So I hope you'll be able to please join us at 7 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Norfolk, Delegate Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the gallery today, we have members of the Chesapeake Public Schools School Board and their superintendent here today in the Capitol. If they please stand. Chesapeake Public Schools serves over 40,000 students at its 45 schools, 2 centers, and virtual academy program. The school's mission is to promote educational excellence by engaging all students in meaningful and innovative learning experiences to empower them to successfully fulfill their life's purpose. The school board is dedicated to the advancement of public education, ensuring that all students have the tools and resources they need to reach their full potential. It is great to have the superintendent, who was just last week named Region 2 Superintendent of the Year by the Virginia Association of School Superintendents. Thank you for being here today and all of your work to inspire our students. And I request the members of the body join me in extending them a warm house welcome.
Welcome and congratulations. Welcome to the Capitol. The delegate from Rockingham, Delegate Runyon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, throughout the Capitol today, we have with us 4-H members and their mentors from throughout the Commonwealth. Visiting with us today are the state cabinet members 4-H youth and livestock ambassadors, and numerous members of the various clubs throughout the Commonwealth. These 4-H members are selected for their knowledge and respect of their respective industries and their initiative as leaders. The Virginia 4-H programs strive to develop skills in leadership, public speaking, citizenship, and professionalism. Cabinet and ambassadors serve a variety of 4-H outreach and service roles in events throughout the state of Virginia. These 4-H members provide me with a tremendous amount of optimism for the future of the Commonwealth. I ask my fellow members to please join me in extending a warm house welcome to the Virginia 4-H members here today and their leaders from the Cooperative Extension Service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Welcome, 4-H. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is my deep pleasure every year to be able to introduce my colleagues and friends from the League of Women Voters. If there are any seated in the galley, would you please rise? The League of Women Voters was formed in 1905, right after women got the right to vote, because immediately the focus of everyone who had worked so hard to get the right to vote was to have informed voting, for not only for themselves, but to make sure that the citizenry as broadly was informed as a voter. So we're all familiar with those candidates' forums and all of the questionnaires that we've filled out over the years. But they also are equally committed and have been involved with a number of suits as well as just strong activity to make sure that we have access to voting, that voting is there for all citizens of the United States, and to make sure that there is strong participation. Finally, let me say that as I listen to the annual introductions throughout the session of the Divine Nine, I always have to embrace the League of Women Voters as being so important in the shaping of myself as a young person, to really listen to both sides, to look for the details, because it made a difference in people's lives. It made a difference in the environment, in our families, and in all of the other positions that the independent arm of the League of Women Voters advocate for, and I hope you will always welcome in your office. Members, would you please give my friends and colleagues from the League of Women Voters a warm house welcome.
Welcome to the Capitol today. Delegate from Campbell, Delegate Zier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure if they made it into the gallery or not, but today is HEAVE Day on the Capitol. HEAVE is Home Educators Association of Virginia, and if they're not in the gallery, apparently, if there are, please stand. If not, we've seen them in the hallways. HEAVE is an organization, a nonprofit organization, advocating and assisting homeschool families across the Commonwealth of Virginia since 1983. They have successfully worked to promote and protect home education in Virginia by working with the Department of Education and legislators, having a presence during the General Assembly sessions, and providing up-to-date information to homeschooling families, the media, and officials. HEAVE, coming from a biblical worldview, serves all homeschoolers regardless of religious or philosophical beliefs. Virginia is home to over 65,000 homeschool students, and I would ask the body to join me in welcoming HEAVE to the Capitol today.
Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate Cousins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, in the gallery today are members of Birth and Color, an organization committed to addressing disparities in maternal, reproductive, and infant health. I would ask that they please rise. Good. Guided by the principles of reproductive justice, they advocate for the right to have children or not have children, and to parent in safe, supportive environments while amplifying the voices of marginalized communities often excluded from equitable health care. Central to their approach is integrating doula care, emotional, physical, and informational support throughout pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum period. Since their founding in 2018, Birth in Color has helped 2,700 women and families navigate pregnancy and birth. They operate the largest doula collective in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which helps reach more families and address disparities on a larger scale. They are amazing advocates for maternal health in the General Assembly, and through their commitment to address reproductive health care disparities for women of color, they have expanded access to quality reproductive health care and have improved maternal outcomes for people all across Virginia. I ask that we please give them a warm house welcome.
Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Sussex, Delegate Waxman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise for 2 introductions today.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, sir. Actually, the first introduction, it's a little bit of sad news. It's a non-introduction. If you look around this chamber, you'll notice that somebody is missing. That's the good people from Brunswick County. Last night, it was my sad news to get a text message that they were going to be unable to put their heavy cast iron pot in their trailer and drive it down the interstate when they had 2 inches of snow in Brunswick County last night. They expressed their regrets, but they're also working to try to reschedule that. Just for you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll help them get here.
Okay. And now it's my honor and privilege to present the pharmacists from across the state of Virginia. If they could please rise in the gallery. Today, we're honored to have the pharmacists with the Virginia Pharmacists Association, the Virginia Society of Health Systems Pharmacists, and various other pharmacy organizations. Today is their lobbying day. They represent all types of pharmacists, and they're here lobbying to try to make sure that they have what they need to provide pharmacy access for those people in our Commonwealth, particularly those rural areas, and trying to do what they can to stop some of these pharmacy deserts that are quickly arising. So it is my privilege to introduce them today, and I ask for a warm house welcome to them. Thank you.
Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an announcement.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind the House that they are invited to attend the Virginia Aviation and Aerospace Caucus tomorrow morning, where we will hear presentations from different aviation organizations and companies. The meeting will start at 8 a.m. in Senate Room 3 of the Capitol Extension, and I hope you can all join us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate from Buckingham, Delegate Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for purposes of an introduction.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the 4-H has already been spoken of, no one has yet mentioned TLC. And so, Mr. Speaker, I learned yesterday that I was going to be visited by a TLC, and I thought I don't want to look unpretty. No. But no, this TLC
that
is
joke writes itself, so I'm not going to respond.
I just felt like you and I were from the same generation, so, and neither of us want any scrubs. No, I wanted to introduce members of the Teen Leadership Council, which is affiliated with the 4-H. Teen Leadership Council functions out of the Holiday Lake State Park, which was founded here in Virginia in 1937 under the Works Progress Administration. Teen Leadership Council is indicative of many, many efforts amongst the 4-Hers in Virginia to further their development of leadership, life skills, and community service, Mr. Speaker. And so these young people at Holiday Lake have taken it upon themselves to go and gather toiletries for the over 2,000 people per year who are served by Holiday Lake State Park, and they and the other 4-Hers who they are with from Giles County, from Cumberland County, Brunswick County, Buckingham County, Louisa County, Hanover County, Appomattox, all wanted to say thank you for the work we do to help support Holiday Lake State Park, and say watch out, because these guys learning leadership are coming for our jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope it is the pleasure of the body to give them the warm welcome of the Virginia House of Delegates.
Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Roanoke, Delegate McNamara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Up in the gallery today, we have representatives from Roanoke County, county administrators and administration, boards of supervisors, and just helpful people that make the county of Roanoke the greatest place to live, along with Salem and part of Roanoke City. Mr. Speaker, I ask this body to recognize.
Welcome, Roanoke County. Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, joining us in the gallery today are members of the Virginia Land Title Association. And if they would please stand so we can recognize them. Mr. Speaker, the VLTA represents title professionals who play a vital role in safeguarding the integrity of real estate transactions throughout the Commonwealth. These dedicated professionals ensure that property ownership rights are protected, providing peace of mind to homebuyers, businesses, and financial institutions alike. Their commitment to excellence strengthens Virginia's real estate market, which is a cornerstone of our state's economy. By fostering education, ethical practices, and advocacy, the VLTA helps ensure fairness and transparency in one of the most significant investments many Virginians will ever make. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to give our guests a warm House welcome.
Welcome to the Capitol today. Pursuant to House Rule 30, the journal shall reflect that the following members are away on pressing personal business and are granted leave from today's session: Delegates Jones, Knight, and Marshall. The clerk shall announce the next order of business.
Mr. Speaker, the second portion of the morning hour is reserved for member requests to move legislation from any uncontested calendar to the regular. There are 5 in this category today, all at the request of Delegate Batten. And they're all in the House Bill's second reading uncontested calendar. Page 7 of the calendar, Delegate Henson's House Bill 1659 out of the block over to the regular calendar. Page 7 again, House Bill 1676, Delegate Phillips's over to the regular calendar. Page 8, Delegate Bulliva's House Bill 1702 over to the regular calendar. Page 12, same category, Delegate Kreisig's HB 2077. And finally, page 13, Delegate Simon's House Bill 2137. All 5 of those are out of the block over to the regular calendar.
Clerk shall announce the next order.
Third portion of the morning hour is reserved for member requests for legislation to go by for the day, and if any such motion by the majority leader, there are 5 in this category as well. Page 4 of the printed calendar following that way, the category of House Bills third reading regular, Delegate Hobbs, House Bill 1639 is by for the day at the request of Delegate Tran. In the category of House Bill second reading uncontested calendar, Delegate Watts is House Bill 1744. That legislation is by for the day. Then in the House Bill second reading regular calendar, that category, page 14, those 2 bills on that, 2 of the 3 bills there, House Bill 1656 and House Bill 1915, Delegate Helmer and Reeser respectively, by for the day at the request of Delegate Tran. And finally, same category forward to page 16, Delegate Hayes's House Bill 1634 is by for the day at the request of Delegate Batten. That's all the by for the day requests that I have.
Delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the legislation as announced by the clerk go by for the day.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that legislation as announced by the clerk go by for the day. As many as favor the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The clerk shall announce the next order of business.
And, Mr. Speaker, the fourth and final portion of the morning hour reserved for member requests for points of personal privilege. Speaker kindly asks that you use your request to speak button to indicate your desire to be recognized.
The delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could we return to the first portion of the morning hour for the purposes of an introduction, please?
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I was just sitting back there with my good friend and former colleague, the delegate from, was it Prince William? I didn't want to give you the wrong title. He has written a book, and he is writing another one. So if any of you who served with him still feel like you got away with something, you know, mind your P's and Q's, because he's still got more ink in the barrel to write with. Anyway, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to introduce my former colleague, the Honorable Delegate and Colonel Scott Lingenfelter.
Welcome back, Delegate. Thank you for being here. The delegate from Hampton, Delegate Cardoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd also like to request to return to the first morning hour for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the great pleasure of introducing the Virginia Professional Firefighters, and if they are in the gallery, if they would please stand. I believe they're behind me.
They are.
Normally, I write these things down, but I'm going to speak from the heart today. I went earlier today to speak at their gathering, and I'm going to tell you, not only are they good at saving lives, they're really good at keeping secrets. Because when I got there, they ambushed me with this award that I had no idea about, and it's a great honor to get to introduce them. To introduce them and be a good representative of people who save lives in our community. So I would ask the House to give them a very warm House welcome. Thank you.
That was like a twofer, like talking about yourself and introducing them. I see you, bro. I see you are a very good politician. The delegate from Richmond City, Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to return to the first morning hour in addition to for an introduction.
The delegate has the floor. You
Thank
got
you,
any
Mr.
awards we don't know about? All right, go
I
ahead.
don't think so, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the gallery, we are joined by the staff and board members of the United Methodist Family Services, and I'd like to ask them to stand, please. UMFS is a nonprofit located in my district and consider themselves unwavering champions for children. They are a community of over 1,000 volunteers, 400 staff, hundreds of foster and adopted families, and community supporters and partners. They have been serving vulnerable children across the Commonwealth for 124 years. They serve over 1,300 children through services including foster care, kinship care, specialized education, and mental health services. I commend them for their work and would ask my colleagues to join me in giving them a very warm House welcome.
Welcome to the Capitol today. The delegate from Spotsylvania, Delegate Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not uncommon for us to be frustrated and even appalled at the happenings in the chamber down the hall. But what we saw just the other day was a dystopian nightmare, Mr. Speaker. That body was debating their version of HJ1, the abortion amendment. And members on the other side of the aisle in the other chamber were working overtime to defeat a proposed change that would have protected parental consent and notification laws. The arguments were, quite frankly, terrifying. The members of the other side of the aisle in the other chamber outright rejected the amendment. And the amendment stated, notwithstanding the above, the Commonwealth's parental consent laws shall remain in effect, and the Commonwealth may regulate the provision of abortion care and gender-affirming care to minors. They decided not to pass by the amendment, but to outright reject it. And it was along party lines. Mr. Speaker, the other side of the aisle wants girls as young as 10, 11, 12 to be able to have an abortion without talking to their parents or talking to a judge or talking to any adults at all. For them, it's not an issue with the bill, it's a feature of the bill, and potentially subjecting these minors to sexual predators. Members of the other side of the aisle argue in that chamber and also in this chamber that our laws will remain in effect until overturned by a court. While that may be true, let's give that a little bit more further thought. Virginia has a constitutional amendment outlining that marriage shall be between a man and a woman. And until the Supreme Court overturned that, that was the law of Virginia. That's what would happen to this amendment here, Mr. Speaker. It would become part of the Constitution. Parental notification law would be inevitably challenged in court. And since it is plain on its face that the law and HJ1 are in conflict, the law will fail and the constitutional amendment will prevail. Any first-year law student can tell you this. Our professional legislative attorneys have affirmed this. Mr. Speaker, the other side of the aisle wants parents cut out of the equation, just like they voted to keep parents out of the loop on social media their children want to use. Just like our former colleague who announced that she's running for this body again, said she wanted parents who didn't affirm their children's gender identity to face charges of criminal abuse. Just like former Governor McAuliffe said, quote, "I do not think parents should be telling schools what they should teach." Mr. Speaker, I stand here as a father of 5 daughters, and I'm concerned for their future. Our children are not the property of the state. They are precious beings made in the image of God. And He has charged us as parents with the care and upbringing of them until they are old enough to care for themselves. Mr. Speaker, it's clear that the majority party is willing to throw our kids to the wolves, to sexual predators. I wish I could tell you why, but for the life of me, I don't understand it. Parents, not the state, not children themselves, are responsible for our children. I hope those on the other side of the aisle will realize this soon. If they don't, the voters will remember it in November. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The delegate. The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Munden King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a mother of 3, it is absolutely disturbing to me to hear my colleagues on the other side stand in this body and debate what happens down the hallway and won't even stand up for women in the chamber where they serve, Mr. Speaker. Because the only people who stand with predators are the people who introduced a total abortion ban without exception for rape or incest. Those are the people who stand with predators, Mr. Speaker. Those of us who stand with women and who believe that women have the right to make their own health care decisions and that voters should decide whether they want the government in their doctor's office or their bedroom. That's what we stand for, Mr. Speaker. And I know that some people don't understand this, but as a woman, I don't need anyone to speak for me. I don't need anyone to guess what decision or direct what decision I should make. We can handle that on our own. And that's why we're minding the business of this body, Mr. Speaker, and not debating what happened down the hallway or focused on politics that have nothing to do with this body. We don't care who's running for what. We care that if I lose my child, the child that I prayed for and hoped for, that I will not die from a toxic blood infection because some politician in Richmond decided they knew better than I did, Mr. Speaker. That's what we stand for. And in closing, I want to remind my colleagues of the word. I thought it was the word for the day. Maybe it's the word for the week. Or maybe it's the word for the entire session, hypocritical. It is absolutely hypocritical to sit in this body and use charged language like sexual predators when you won't even deal with predators in your own midst. So, Mr. Speaker, I close in this. Don't lecture me about my body. Don't lecture me about my health care decisions, and don't pretend that you care. Send this to the voters so they can decide for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'll remind the members of the gallery that you are here as guests. If you disturb the peace in this body, you will be removed from the chamber. Clerk will call the calendar.
Calendar for today, Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025, for the Virginia House of Delegates. Page 1, first category, House bills on third reading, uncontested calendar. 8 bills in the uncontested calendar block, which are as follows. House bills 1582, 1587, 1628, 1778, 1799, 1856, House Bill 2074, and over on page 4 of the printed calendar following that way, rounding out the block, third reading uncontested calendar, House Bill 2085.
Delegate, I'm sorry. Shall the bills pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 96, no 0.
Ayes 96, no 0. The bills pass.
Continuing with today's calendar, next order of business, House bills on third reading or passage, regular calendar. 2 bills in this category. Middle of page 4 of the printed calendar. First up is House Bill 2096, relating to Intelligence Speed Assistance Program established penalty.
Shall the bill pass? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 81, no 16.
Ayes 81, no 16. The bill passes.
And last in this category is House Bill 1703, page 5 of the printed calendar. This legislation relates to alcoholic beverage control, tied house exceptions.
Shall the bill pass? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 96, no 0.
Ayes 96, no 0. The bill passes.
Continuing with the calendar, Mr. Speaker, next category, House bills on second reading, uncontested calendar.
Mr. Speaker.
House Bill 50.
Delegate, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Delegate Falk here, Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I apologize. If I may, move to, having voted on the prevailing side upon which we passed a whole bunch of bills on the uncontested calendar, that we reconsider that vote so that the gentleman to my left can vote.
They call that dry snitching where I'm from. He's just straight snitching in his face, bro. All those in favor of reconsidering the motions, the uncontested block by which that we just passed, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Clerk will call the calendar.
Redo the vote.
She needs 1 second to reset all of those bills that the delegate missed voting on.
Okay, go ahead. So there we go.
The clerk can close the roll. Clerk will close the roll. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, this time House ayes 97, no 0.
Ayes 97, no 0. The bill's passed.
Continuing with the calendar, next category before the body, House bills on second reading, uncontested calendar, approximately a dozen and a half bills in the uncontested second reading calendar, beginning middle of page 5 of the printed calendar, House Bill 1553, which is legislation that seeks to amend the Code of Virginia relating to the Court of Appeals, procedure on appeal, criminal cases, the legislation reports committee on courts of justice.
The delegate from Patrick, Delegate Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1553 removes the requirement that a copy of a notice of appeal sent to the Court of Appeals in a criminal case be mailed or delivered to the Attorney General. The Attorney General is notified at a later date when the appeal is perfected. I ask that the body engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Next up in the block, House Bill 1568, legislation to amend and reenact a section of the Code of Virginia related to jurisdiction of corporate authorities, Frederick County. Legislative Report Committee for Courts of Justice with amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Winchester, Delegate Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to give Frederick County Sheriff deputies the ability to enforce the law at county meetings which are held, and for Frederick County citizens. With this amendment language, there are no adverse effects to Winchester law enforcement efforts. I ask that we engross this bill and pass this on third reading.
House Bill 1602, top of page 6 of the calendar, is now up. It is legislation to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to military leaves of absence for employees of the Commonwealth or political subdivisions, law enforcement officers. Legislation report of Committee on Public Safety.
The delegate from Prince William, Delegate Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1602 merely extends the same paid leave provisions to law enforcement that this body passed to firefighters last year. I hope it's the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Continuing with the block, House Bill 1605 is legislation to amend and reenact sections of the Code of Virginia relating to Uniform Trust Code, qualified trustee definition. This legislation supported through the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Albemarle, Delegate Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
This is a technical change that will increase consumer choice by allowing more qualified entities such as law firms and charitable organizations to serve as trustees of self-settled spendthrift trust. I am told that this is a technical change fixing a Scribner's error, which made me look up what exactly a Scribner's error was. Oh, sorry. Mr. Speaker, I ask that it be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Continuing with the block, House Bill 1642 is now before you. This legislation seeks to amend the Code of Virginia relating to criminal justice, risk assessments, human oversight. Legislation reported for the Committee for Courts of Justice with amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Chesapeake, Delegate Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendment.
Shall the substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 1642 is a measure that will allow us to put in place measures to require human oversight when applying risk assessments in determining one's future decision-making with regards to disposition on criminal cases. And so, Mr. Speaker, we know there are great advantages to artificial intelligence. In the case of justice and administering justice, we believe that it's important that judges and other decision makers consider all relevant information about the defendant in order to make the most appropriate decision regarding diversion, sentencing, or release. I hope it's the will of the body to engross the bill and move it on to its third reading.
Next up in the block is House Bill 1645. This legislation seeks to amend and reenact a portion of the Acts of Assembly of 1980, which provided a charter for the city of Chesapeake relating to elections filling vacancies. Legislation reported Committee on County, Cities, and Towns.
Delegate from Chesapeake, Delegate Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 1645 is a charter amendment for the city of Chesapeake. What this does is apply a measure or give the authority to the city to actually change its charter to move a certain date regarding elections. When we moved the local elections from May to November just a few years ago, there has left some confusion with some of the localities, such as the city of Chesapeake. And what they have faced is a situation where members who are sitting as council members, when they decide to run for the office of mayor, the local ordinance now, according to the charter, requires that the individual resign their seat prior to the election. This just clarifies it for the city of Chesapeake that that particular date will now move from being July 1 to December the 31st. I hope it's the will of the body to engross the bill and move it on to its third reading.
Mr. Speaker, House Bills 1659 and 1676 in the printed calendar, they've been moved out of the block of the uncontested calendar block over to the regular calendar, therefore top of page 8. Next up in the block, uncontested calendar, is House Bill 1696, legislation to amend and reenact a portion of the Acts of Assembly of 1918, which provided a charter for the city of Norfolk relating to division of fire, classified service. Legislation, again, was reported to the Committee for County, Cities, and Towns.
The delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Askew.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, HB 1696, the request of the City of Norfolk makes small changes to the charter, which aligns and exempts the position of Deputy Fire Chief of Fire Rescue from the classified services of the city. The legislation will conform with the current classification status of the Norfolk Police Department, Deputy Police Chiefs. Passing law, Norfolk Deputy Fire Chief of Fire Rescue report directly to Norfolk Fire Chief. I hope it's all the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 1702 is out of the block over to the regular calendar. Continuing with the block is House Bill 1721. House Bill 1721 is legislation to amend and reenact portion of the Code of Virginia relating to the Uniform Easement Relocation Act. Legislation Support Committee for Courts of Justice with an amendment in nature. Substitute.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the committee substitute, the bill before you is the product of the Uniform Code Commission, brought to me by a longtime member of the commission over 20 years, which makes uniform code in the area of a property owner who has an easement and how to adjust that easement without costly litigation. It is a uniform code that has been adopted, I believe at this point, by 8-9 states. The two committee amendments that you have adopted within the substitute do two things that make sure that the definition of public utility to which this Uniform Easement Act does not apply is appropriately worded to cover all of the all of the bodies that provide utilities to the public, and it also, because of a concern about it not being retroactive, we have assurance that under our structure of the law, the bill can go ahead as it is. I hope it'll be the will of the body to engross the bill, pass it to its third reading.
Next up in the uncontested block, top of page 9, House Bill 1734 is legislation to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to Sex Trafficking Response Coordinator. Name change. Legislation reported again from the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Surprise. The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, HB 1734 changes the name of the Sex Trafficking Response Coordinator to the Human Trafficking Response Coordinator. This updates the language will reflect the work that this position already does to address both sex and labor trafficking, and will also be helpful to Virginians who may work with labor trafficking victims and not pursue resources and training available through DCJS because of the current title. So it is my hope that it will be the pleasure of the body to engross this bill and move it on to its third reading.
House Bill 1744 in the printed calendar is by for the day. Next up in the uncontested block is House Bill 1770, legislation to amend and reenact Sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the Uniform Trust Code. Definitions, again, reported. This legislation reported to the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1770 adds electronic to the definition in the Uniform Trust Code and clarifies that the electronic signature of trust documents is allowed, just as it is for nearly every other document. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Continuing with the block, top of page 10 of the printed calendar, House Bill 1781 is legislation to amend and reenact Sections of the Code of Virginia relating to foreign protective orders in cases of family abuse enforcement. Legislation reported to the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, 1781 came to me from the Judicial Council of Virginia and would make a statutory cross-reference which would eliminate any potential for confusion as to whether foreign protective orders may be enforced within the Commonwealth. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 1819 is legislation to amend and reenact Sections of the Code of Virginia relating to the CPACE financing programs. This legislation supports Committee for County, Cities, and Towns with an amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Reed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move the committee substitute.
Shall the substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program, has been in existence for many years now here in the Commonwealth. It's used by 17 different localities. This is a bill that makes technical improvement changes to the program based upon input from the Virginia PACE program. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and move it on to its third reading.
House Bill 1858 is legislation to amend and reenact Sections of the Code of Virginia relating to limitation on prosecution of felony due to lapse of time after finding of probable cause, certified misdemeanors. Legislation reported for the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Smith County, Delegate Arnold.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, HB 1858 clarifies Virginia's criminal speedy trials for ancillary misdemeanors certified to circuit court with it's the same time frame as the felonies in which they accompany. It's a recommendation of the Virginia Criminal Justice Conference. I move the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Top of page 11, printed calendar, House Bill 1871 is legislation to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to transfer on death deeds inter vivos a deed conveying real property to another. Legislation Reporting Committee of Courts of Justice with two amendments.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendments.
Shall the amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this bill says that if you leave your property to someone using a transfer on death deed and then you sell that property to somebody else, that automatically revokes your transfer on death deed. I hope it will be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Next up in the block is House Bill 1874, which is legislation to amend and reenact sections of the Code of Virginia relating to publication of personal information of retired or former law enforcement officers. Legislation reported to Courts of Justice with amendments.
Delegate from Prince William, Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendments.
Shall the amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1874 provides that for a 4-year period, retired or former law enforcement officers in good standing have the right to petition the court to prohibit their publication of their personal identifiable information, which includes home address, home telephone numbers, personal cell phones, or personal email addresses. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Continuing with the second reading uncontested calendar block, top of page 12 of the printed calendar, House Bill 1912 is now before you. It seeks to amend and react a multitude of sections of the Code of Virginia, all relating to wills, trust, and fiduciaries, consumer price index adjustments. Legislation Reports Committee for Courts of Justice with amendment nature as substitute.
Delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Reeser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the committee amendment.
Shall the substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, House Bill 1912 updates various dollar amounts in the administration of trusts and estates to keep up with inflation. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
House Bill 1948 is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to abandoned mine land grant retention fund established. This legislation was reported to the Committee on Appropriations.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Bolivar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 1948 is at the request of the Virginia Department of Energy. Virginia will be receiving $22.8 million in federal funds each year for the next 15 years for abandoned mine land reclamation. Since it's difficult to spend exactly $22.8 million per year, federal law allows Virginia to be able to retain up to 30% of those funds in any particular given year, but those funds do have to be placed into a special non-reverting fund, only to be used for land remediation. Otherwise, those funds go back to the federal government. The fund is interest-bearing, would require no state funds. However, it will ensure that tens of millions of dollars will be spent in Virginia and helping our southwestern counties rather than going back to the federal government. Mr. Speaker, I move we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
House Bill 2077 is out of the block over to the regular calendar. Therefore, top of page 13 of the printed calendar, House Bill 2111 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to membership of the Virginia Criminal Sentencing Commission. This legislation reported to the Committee for Courts of Justice with line amendments.
Delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendments.
Shall the amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The amendment is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 2111 comes from as a recommendation from the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission. It adds the executive director or the executive director's designee to the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission to the membership of the Virginia Criminal Sentencing Commission. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to its third reading.
Shall the bills be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bills are engrossed and passed to their third reading.
Mr. Speaker, continuing on with today's calendar, next category, House bills on second reading regular. Second reading regular, approximately 20 bills or so in this category. Top of page 14 of the printed calendar, House Bills 1656 and 1915 are by for the day. Therefore, the first bill in this new category is House Bill 1716, which is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia related to contraception, right to contraception, applicability, enforcement. The Legislative Report of Committee on Health and Human Services and the body agreed to a floor substitute yesterday.
Delegate from Newport News, Delegate Price.
Yes, Mr. Speaker and members, House Bill 1716 would codify a person's right to contraception by preventing state or local action that would infringe upon an individual's right to access the various FDA-approved drugs and devices for contraception used in preventing pregnancy and treating other health issues like endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome. And as the clerk described, our substitute yesterday just reiterated current code that sterilization does not apply to minors. I would also like to reiterate, Mr. Speaker, that this bill is about preventing state and localities from enacting laws that would prevent access to contraception. This bill does not change current law on who can get contraception or how they can get it. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope the body would engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
The delegate from Culpeper, Delegate Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the delegate yield for a question?
Will the delegate yield?
I yield.
Delegate will yield.
Mr. Speaker, I think the delegate covered just about everything I was going to ask. I just wanted one more final clarification because, again, I'm not an attorney. The amendment, I think, was Section E, where it said nothing in this chapter shall be construed to permit or sanction the performance of any sterilization procedure without the patient's voluntary and informed consent. Now, when I first read that, I'm thinking, okay, so a minor could still get this as long as they gave informed consent. Is the reasoning why the delegate used this language is because other language in the code already establishes that a minor cannot give consent to sterilization?
The delegate from Newport News, Delegate
Thank
Price.
you, Mr. Speaker. I would answer the delegate that yes, the three code sections that I said yesterday, which I will say again for the record because it's a new day, 54.1-2974, 54.1-2975, 54.1-2969 all show that in our current code, minors are not included in informed consent for the purposes of sterilization.
Shall the bill be, you have a follow-up question?
No, I thank the delegate.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Top of page 15 of the printed calendar, bill before you next is House Bill 1601, legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to siting of data centers, site assessment, high energy use facility. The Legislative Report Committee on County, Cities, and Towns with amendments.
Delegate from Prince William, Delegate Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee amendments.
Shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1601 seeks to improve transparency in the siting process for high energy use facilities, like a data center. And it would require localities to look at things like sound and infrastructure for transmission and distribution. And then there's a permissive portion where localities may look at things like farmland and the impacts of water. I hope it is the will of the body to engross the bill and pass on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
House Bill 1608 is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to firearm industry members, standards of responsible conduct, civil liability. Legislative Report Committee on Public Safety.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1608, the Virginia Firearms Industry Standards of Responsible Conduct Act, simply establishes a mechanism by which those who are involved in the firearms industry and act irresponsibly, not responsibly, can be held accountable civilly. I hope it is the will of the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Delegate from Bedford, Delegate Griffin.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this is a bill to target gun manufacturers and make them civilly liable for things that they didn't do when somebody else commits a crime with a gun. It's a bill clearly meant to run firearm companies out of business and out of Virginia. We should not be singling out American manufacturing companies to try to shut them down, to try to allow them to have frivolous lawsuits brought by them. We don't do this to car companies. We don't do it to needle manufacturers. Why would we single out this one industry. It's not right. This allows private lawsuits from private citizens. It allows the Attorney General to bring action, and it allows 130 plus localities to bring actions against these gun companies. Again, it targets certain sectors of the economy. Earlier this week, we were in one of the committees, and our colleagues across the other side of the aisle, when a bill came up about protecting children on social media, they said, there's no way I can support this because there's a federal preemption issue. And yet we have a federal statute exactly on point here. It passed in 2005, the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. And this goes directly in contradiction to what federal law already is. This takes away intent under Section G of the bill draft as a prerequisite in a lawsuit. It means that American corporations can be sued even if it didn't intend, even if nobody at the company intended for a firearm to be used in a certain manner. It goes way too far. I ask you to join me in opposing a bill that targets private industry, and please vote no. Thank you.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Helmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill, the PLCAA, which the delegate referenced, specifically provides the opportunity for states to establish civil liability codes. This bill specifically talks about the unlawful or reckless conduct of a firearms manufacturer. It puts firearms manufacturers in the same posture as anybody else who sells a tool or product in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I hope it is will the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and pass the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third read.
Top of page 16, that legislation's by for the day. Therefore, next up, second reading regular is House Bill 1665, patroned by Delegate Jones, which is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to fines, restitution, forfeiture, penalties, and other costs, criminal and traffic cases, itemized statement. This legislation reported for the Committee Courts of Justice.
The delegate from Arlington, Delegate Hope.
Yeah, that's what.
Page 16, House Bill 1665 is now before the body.
Speaker, can that bill go by for the day?
Bill is Delegate from Arlington, Delegate Hope, moves that HB 1665 go by for the day. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The bill is by for the day.
Mr. Speaker, continuing, bottom of page 16, House Bill 1690 is legislation to amend and reenact Section Code of Virginia relating to eminent domain, documents provided to landowner. Legislation reported to Committee Courts of Justice, Amendment Nature Substitute.
Delegate from Virginia Beach, Delegate Converse Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House adopt the Courts of Justice substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1690 relates to documents provided in an eminent domain situation. Currently, the law as written requires that in that situation, 60 years of title documents would be provided. That would be anything like deeds of trust, second mortgages, a lot of documents. In a normal title search, they would research up to 60 years, but you wouldn't provide 60 years of documents. You wouldn't get that at a house closing. So this is extremely time-consuming, the way it's written, costly, and a disservice to the owner who would have to sift through literally a cabinet's worth of paperwork to figure out what was relevant and what wasn't. This bill will amend the code to match current standards in the title industry, only and searching back 60 years as normal, but only giving what documents are absolutely necessary, Mr. Speaker. I move that this bill be engrossed and passed on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
Top of page 17 of the printed calendar. Next up is House Bill 1735, legislation to amend and reenact Section of the Code of Virginia relating to voter registration, time period for closing registration records before certain elections. Legislation reported to the Committee on Privileges and Elections.
Delegate from Fredericksburg, Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 7035 is a very simple bill. It shortens the amount of days before the registration records are closed for registering voters. It changes the number of days before the records are closed from 21 to 10, and in the case of a special election, from 13 to 10. Very simple, and I hope it will be the will of the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading. Thank you, Mr.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next up is House Bill 1757, legislation to amend and reenact Section of the Code of Virginia relating to compensation of court-appointed counsel. Legislation reported to the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Norfolk, Delegate Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is HB 1757. This bill simply clarifies that indigent defendants shall be assessed the same fees for their legal representation, regardless of whether they are represented by a court-appointed counsel or a public defender. Under current law, there's some discrepancy on this point. We've worked with the Virginia Supreme Court. This bill is also a recommendation of the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission. I ask that we engross the bill and move it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
Next up is House Bill 1764, legislation to amend and reenact Section of the Code of Virginia relating to disposable plastic bag tax, distribution to towns. Legislation reporting for the Committee on County, Cities, and Towns.
The delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1764 provides that any town located within a county that has imposed a disposable plastic bag tax shall receive a distribution of revenues collected by that county based on local sales tax distribution formulas for appropriations to the towns. I move that this bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
Over on page 18 of the printed calendar, continuing with this category, next up is House Bill 1775, a bill to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to divorce, adultery, filing, parties living separate and apart. Legislation was reported for the Committee of Courts of Justice.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, HB 1775 is a bill that would allow for a divorce from bed and board as opposed to a divorce from the bond of matrimony, but divorce from bed and board without the need for fault like abuse or adultery. It'll allow divorcing couples to begin resolving issues like custody and use of the marital home while a one-year separation period runs. The bill does not reduce the one-year waiting period for a divorce from the bond of matrimony. It also specifies that adultery is only grounds for fault when the conduct occurred prior to separation. The bill will make, Mr. Speaker, divorce proceedings timelier, more efficient, less costly, and less acrimonious. The bill came to me from the Family Law Coalition, and I hope it will be the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
House Bill 1797 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to concealed handgun permits, reciprocity with other states. Legislation was reported from the Committee on Public Safety with an amendment.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Hellman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the committee's amendments.
Shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1797 simply means that the work that we've done on a bipartisan basis to establish the standards for a concealed carry permit in Virginia will apply when folks from out of state come to Virginia, and it requires the state police superintendent and the attorney general to certify that the training requirements in other states meet Virginia's standards. I hope it is the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed the third reading.
House Bill 1827 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to comprehensive plan, social determinants of health. Legislation report committee, county, cities, and towns.
Delegate from Newport News, Delegate Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, HB 1827 is a permissive bill which allows localities to use existing health data as part of its next and any subsequent review of the comprehensive plan. This data will help planners identify neighborhoods with high health burdens or older populations. It will help localities plan for their future needs, such as access to medical clinics, physical therapy, housing for aging in place, access to healthy food, and opportunities for exercise in walkable neighborhoods to make for healthier communities. I hope it will be the will and the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed the third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
House Bill 1886 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to payments of costs when proceedings deferred and defendant placed on probation. Legislation reported from the Committee of Courts of Justice, amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Arlington, Delegate McClure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the adoption of the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, HB 1886 states that when a person has successfully completed all terms and conditions set by the court for deferred disposition, that the court cannot enter a conviction solely based on the person has not paid all of the court costs. The committee substitute makes clear that this bill will not relieve anyone from having to pay those costs. Instead, it simply ensures that no one receives a conviction rather than a dismissal as a result of only owing court costs. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
House Bill 1894 has been referred to appropriations. Therefore, the next up, second reading regular, is House Bill 1960, which is legislation to amend and reenact two sections of the Code of Virginia relating to firearms transfers to another person from a prohibited person. This legislation reported to the Committee on Public Safety.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Bennett Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1960 will keep illegal guns out of the hands of convicted domestic abusers. It aligns processes across different code sections, provide clarity and an enforcement mechanism for law enforcement to enforce our existing laws and protect the security and safety of survivors of domestic abuse. The bill does not affect law-abiding gun owners, and I move the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
Over on page 20, House Bill 2054 is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to affordable housing, assisted living facilities. This legislation reports to Committee for County, Cities, and Towns.
Delegate from Loudoun, Delegate Reeser.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 2054 passed out of committee 20-2. It permits localities to negotiate with developers for a set-aside of affordable units in assisted living facilities beginning January of 2026. This type of negotiation can result in a developer winning higher density than normal, which would actually increase supply while helping Virginia's senior citizens. I hope it's the will of the body to engross the bill and pass it to its third read.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
Mr. Speaker, next up is House Bill 2105, legislation to amend and reenact portions of the Code of Virginia relating to local correctional facilities, investigation of acts of violence, designated local law enforcement agency. The legislation reported to the Committee for Public Safety with an amendment nature substitute.
Delegate from Richmond County, Delegate Kent.
Mr. Speaker, I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will facilitate collaboration between regional jails and law enforcement to ensure a structured approach to report and investigate serious violent incidences through a memorandum of understanding. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
House Bill 2128 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia relating to derelict buildings, civil penalties. Legislation was reported to the Committee on County, Cities, and Towns.
Delegate from Lynchburg, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
HB 2128 provides the same civil penalties for derelict non-residential or commercial properties as derelict residential properties when imposing a civil fine. This bill is supported by 18 members of the Virginia First City Coalition, which includes my city, the city of Lynchburg. We're trying to get commercial and industrial properties, residential properties back on the tax rolls. This bill is just another tool in the toolbox for localities to maintain our communities and clean up unsafe structures if needed, as needed, Mr. Speaker, I move that this bill be engrossed and passed to the third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
And Mr. Speaker, continuing this category, regular calendar, second reading, picking up 5 bills that have moved out of the uncontested block. Going back to page 7, if you're following along that way, the bill before you next is House Bill 1659, which is legislation to amend the Code of Virginia relating to local foundation and soil management fund. Legislation was reported to the Committee on County, Cities, and Towns.
Delegate from Prince William, Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, House Bill 1659 is a local authorization bill. This bill allows locality, if they so choose, to create a local foundation soil management fund to support private property owners or common interest communities with foundation management or soil settlement repairs and prevention. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
House Bill 1676 is legislation to repeal the second enactment of Chapter 525 of the Acts of Assembly of 2020 as amended and reenacted by portions of the Acts of Assembly of 2021 Special Session 1 and Acts of Assembly 2023, all related to the Go Virginia Grants program, matching funds, sunset repeal. This legislation was reported from the Committee on Appropriations.
The delegate from Henry County, Delegate Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. HB 1676 removes the July 1st, 2025 sunset date of the program, allowing a locality to use grant funds awarded by the Tobacco Region Revitalization Commission as matching funds for Go Virginia grants. I ask that the bill be engrossed and moved to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
Going forward to page 8 of the printed calendar, next up, House Bill 1702. This is legislation to amend and reenact various sections of the Code of Virginia repeal, a couple others, all relating to Urban Public-Private Partnership Redevelopment Fund, funding requirements report. Legislation report of Committee on Appropriations, Amendment Nature Substitute.
Delegate for Fairfax, Delegate Bullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, House Bill 1702 is a recommendation of the Virginia Housing Commission. The Urban Public-Private Partnership Redevelopment Fund has actually been on the books since 2000, and it was established after the General Assembly did a study on how to increase the affordability and accessibility of housing in Virginia. The issue that this fund gets at is the lack of large areas of clear redevelopable land in the urban environment and the high cost to remediate that land. And so unlike greenfield development, urban areas have to deal with parcel consolidation, cleaning and remediation of sites in order to make them attractive for redevelopment. The changes in House Bill 1702 are intended to make the fund more useful and relevant to today's challenges, including expanding the types of entities that can partner with the locality, providing more discretion in matching requirements, and focusing the fund to target on areas experiencing high levels of fiscal stress or high levels of commercial vacancy rates. Mr. Speaker, I would move that we engross the bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to third reading? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to third reading.
Next up is House Bill 2077, legislation to amend and reenact several portions of the Code of Virginia relating to Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund, loan and grant program, eligible recipients, federally recognized tribes, as well as Virginia recognized tribes. Legislation report Committee on Appropriations, Amendment Nature Substitute.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Creasy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill has a substitute. I move the committee substitute.
Shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Mr. Speaker, members of the body, House Bill 2077 expands eligibility for the Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund to federally and state recognized tribes. This fund was established to provide support and mitigate flooding impacts in vulnerable Virginia communities, but current law only allows local governments to apply for and receive grants or loans from this fund. This bill will help ensure that federally recognized tribes and the Virginia recognized tribes will have access to these critical grants. Hopes to will the body to engross this bill and pass it on to its third reading.
Delegate from Stafford, Delegate Milday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, the sentiment and functionality of this bill is laudable, and I thank the delegate from Fairfax for bringing it forward. I only take exception to one small part. Mr. Speaker, all but 3 of our Virginia recognized tribes have navigated the arduous process of gaining federal recognition. Those same tribes with federal recognition also went through a similar process before 2010 with Virginia to get their state recognition. The other 3 tribes did not because they could not. Instead, they gained their tribal status by a simple vote from the General Assembly in a House joint resolution. And in fact, those 3 Virginia-only tribes have, as of yet, been unsuccessful in meeting their necessary federal criteria. I mean, I'm not saying they won't be eventually recognized, but I think we should refrain from extending any further tax taxpayer dollars or benefits to those unrecognized tribes until we or the Bureau of Indian Affairs have verified their authenticity. It may seem like a small thing, but I don't want to play a part in any type of cultural appropriation. So something to consider when casting your voice vote or vote on this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Prince William, Delegate Bundy King.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to remind the body of the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which was passed by this body and impacted generations of indigenous folks throughout Virginia when they were stripped of their indigenous identity. All of this was done in an effort to outlaw interracial marriage. And so for those of us who have family ancestry from these various tribes and in communities like the one that I represent in Stafford County, where we have a number of tribes where people have unfortunately lost so many things due to this body in 1924 passing that law where they were banned from their heritage and their culture. But they've held on, Mr. Speaker, and they have done everything that they can to continue the traditions of their forefathers. And in Stafford County in particular, these types of tribes have been ignored and abused and stripped of their identity, and I would hate for us to once again do this to those tribes in Stafford County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Arlington, Delegate Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking of the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For years, I worked in Congress on several different issues, including to try to get all of our Virginia tribes federally recognized. I did this when I was the head of Congressional and Federal Affairs for then Governor Tim Kaine, and it was one of the things that he worked hardest on and cared deeply about. The process to do what we had to do to get these tribes recognized by the federal government, and these are the tribes of Pocahontas that had not been federally recognized, is nearly impossible under the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs process, because you have to have actual records going back to the foundation of the tribe to document yourself up. The problem is, during the Civil War, a lot of those records were destroyed, completely destroyed. Yes. And then to piggyback on something that Delegate Bundy King brought up, during the Walter Plecker era in Virginia, you had a very specific intended purpose from the state government to erase indigenous cultures and people. You're either white or black, and you couldn't be both. And so the idea that there's a string or a line of documentation for a lot of these tribes is near impossible. And so we actually had to go around the traditional BIA process to get our tribes recognized because of these problems. And so I would just say I'm opposed to the amendment. And also, I on behalf of the environmental community and the people I've spoken to, they are also opposed to this amendment, considering what it's trying to accomplish.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Bolivar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just briefly speaking to the bill, I just remind the body that these are our Virginia tribes, right? And so this body saw fit to make sure that we recognized our Virginia tribes. And I'd be so reticent to go ahead and cede that to the federal government. I'm proud of these Virginia tribes, proud to be able to call them Virginia citizens. I also, though, want to take it back to the what are we trying to do here? And so just remember, this is access. It's not a special privilege. This is access to the Community Flood Protection Fund. And so I think we all know air and water know bounds. This just simply allows for these Virginia tribes to be able to come up with a match in order to be able to address the issue of climate change and flooding prevention on their properties. They are asking us to be able to be good stewards of all of our environment. And that's what this bill does, and I hope we will pass it on and engross it onto its third reading.
Delegate from Stafford, Delegate Milday.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I may respond.
Do you want to speak to the bill? Yes. The delegate has the floor again.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate, I'm actually happy to hear that several of the members are so well acquainted with this issue. And and I am very well aware of Walter Plecker's racist policies in the 1920s-ish and how that played itself out. In the case of at least, I have taken the time to read tons of documentation on this relative to at least one of the tribes. And we're not talking about a 50-year gap in documents. We are talking about over a 300-year gap in documents. In one case, from the 1700s until the 1900s, 1600s until the 1900s, not a single newspaper, census, church record, nothing. And I'll remind you that all of the other federally recognized tribes who endured the same racism, they do have those records, extensive records. So there's something different about a couple of these tribes that we have recognized. And you're right, this is a access to federal money, whether you think that's taxpayer dollars or our business or not. But this came up, and I know this will come before us again and again and again. The federally recognized process at least proves the authenticity of tribes, and I'm sorry, but we haven't done that. We've used a racial period in Virginia's history to say you don't have to do that. And so, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I won't speak again to this today.
Delegate from Henrico, Delegate Willett.
Mr. Speaker, I call the pending question.
Delegate from Henrico, Delegate Willett calls the pending question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. Shall the bill be engrossed and pass the third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and pass the third reading.
And, Mr. Speaker, last but not least, House Bill 2137 is legislation to amend and reenact section of the Code of Virginia related to affordable dwelling unit program. Cities of Falls Church, legislation is reported to the Committee on County, Cities, and Towns.
The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, House Bill 2137 is an affordable housing bill, and I think it actually lines up very well with Governor Youngkin's recent Executive Order 42 on affordable housing, increasing the supply of affordable housing. In his executive order, Governor Youngkin said, we want, with record employer relocations, expansions in the Commonwealth, over $85 billion in capital investment, nearly 250,000 jobs created, and a reversal of recent trends on outmigration, it is clear that Virginia is growing, and we need to make sure the supply of housing can meet our surging demand. That's from Governor Glenn Youngkin. So how does House Bill 2137 help meet that growing demand that the governor's identified? Mr. Speaker, it does something very simple. It says that the City of Falls Church can do what the County of Arlington, the County of Fairfax, the City of Fairfax, and the City of Alexandria can already do, which is to enact an affordable dwelling unit ordinance in which they can exchange more density. More density means more housing, more supply for some affordable dwelling units, right? So this is an increasing supply bill that will allow the City of Falls Church, which is in a high-growth area of the Commonwealth, to increase the supply of housing just like all their neighbors can do. We have a little 2.2 square mile donut hole in this region that has this authority. All the City of Falls Church is asking is that they be added to that list of localities with that authority so they can increase the supply of housing, just like Governor Youngkin says we have to do to make Virginia a great place to relocate a business and bring your workforce. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I hope it be the pleasure of the body to engross the bill and pass it to its third reading.
Shall the bill be engrossed and pass the third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and pass on to its third reading.
Mr. Speaker, that completes today's calendar.
Per House Rule 51, the House is returned to the morning hour. Does the clerk have any additional announcements or communications?
No communications. Simply the meeting scheduled for this 15th day of our 46 days scheduled to be together. Mr. Speaker, the meeting scheduled for this afternoon is as follows. Committee on Finance is meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment of the House. They'll be in House Committee Room B. The Committee on Appropriations is meeting 30 minutes, I apologize, 30 minutes upon adjournment of the House up on the 12th floor over the GAB, so we will change that. And then once the full committee's finished, two of its subcommittees are going to meet. First up will be the Transportation and Public Safety Subcommittee. Then once they are finished, the Commerce, Agriculture, and Natural Resources Subcommittee of Appropriations will meet. So Appropriations, two subs all up on the 12th floor this afternoon. Committee for Courts of Justice, the full committee meeting is canceled in lieu of that time. The two subs will be meeting. The Courts of Justice Civil Subcommittee will be meeting 15 minutes upon adjournment of the Finance Committee, and they'll be gathering and meeting over in the House North Subcommittee room. 15 minutes upon adjournment of the Finance Committee, the criminal sub, they'll be meeting in House Room C over on the second floor as well. The Virginia Environmental and Renewable Energy Caucus is meeting this afternoon at 3:30 in House Subcommittee Room up on the 10th floor. The Career and Technical Education Caucus is meeting at 4 o'clock. They'll be at the House Subcommittee Room 9 on the 9th floor. Transportation Committee's Highway Safety and Policy Subcommittee, they'll be meeting at 4 o'clock today, House Committee Room A down in the lower level. And then once that subcommittee's finished, Transportation Committee's Innovations ad hoc subcommittee will be meeting again in House Room A. Then the last legislative business for this afternoon will be Agriculture, Chesapeake, and Natural Resources Agriculture Subcommittee. They're at 4 o'clock as well, but they'll be up on the second floor, House South Subcommittee Room 210. Looking ahead to tomorrow, January 23rd, the Capitol Commission Bible Studies at 7 a.m. As aforementioned, Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus will be at 7 a.m. The former will be in the Speaker's Conference Room. The Sportsmen's Caucus will be in the 7th floor House North Meeting Room on the 7th floor, obviously. Health and Human Services Behavioral Health Subcommittees meeting bright and early at 7 a.m. tomorrow in House Committee Room C on the second floor. This is a change for this meeting only, so HHS Behavioral Health will meet at 7, and then at 8 o'clock, the full Committee on Health and Human Services will be meeting. They'll be in House Room C as well, just a little bit slightly earlier than usual. And then following the full committee, once it's completed its docket, their HHS Subcommittee on Health Professions will be meeting. All that's over on House Room C. At 7:30 tomorrow, County, Cities, and Towns Subcommittee number 2 will be meeting. They'll be in the House South Subcommittee Room on the second floor. Also at 7:30 tomorrow, the Hampton Roads Caucus is meeting up on the 7th floor, House South Meeting Room. At 8 o'clock tomorrow, the Public Safety Committee's Public Safety Subcommittee will be meeting in the House North Subcommittee Room, second floor as well. As mentioned previously, the Aviation Caucus is meeting tomorrow at 8 in Senate Room 3 here in the Capitol down in the Extension. Then at 9 o'clock, the Committee on Transportation will be meeting its normal time. House Committee Room B on the second floor of the GAB. And then finally, Mr. Speaker, the 2 caucuses will be meeting before we go into session. The Republican caucus is at 11 a.m. tomorrow in House Room 2. The Democratic caucus at 11 a.m. in House Room 1. Mr. Speaker, those are all the announcements I have, sir.
Doug from Newport News, Delegate Simons.
Mr. Speaker, may we return to the first morning hour for purposes of an announcement?
The delegate has the floor.
The CTE caucus meets today at 4 p.m. in the 9th floor House Committee Room. We will be learning about the aviation program at Blue Ridge Community College and also about the Fast Forward program and how it is being used in Newport News with Chancellor Dr. DeRay and the Secretary of Labor. I hope to see everyone there.
Delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when the House adjourned today, it adjourn to reconvene tomorrow at 12 noon.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to reconvene tomorrow at 12 noon. It's been in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House do now adjourn.
The delegate from Alexandria, Delegate Herring, moves that the House do now adjourn. It's been in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion is agreed to. The House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 12 noon.